Well, hello, friends. My name's Barb Walden, and I am thrilled to welcome you this evening to our third and final program in our new series, Hands on History. I hope you've been enjoying the last couple of weeks. We've really been learning a lot about preserving church heritage as well as sharing church heritage. And just for a refresher, some of the things that we've been able to do over the last 3 weeks. We've gathered with people who are actively involved in preserving community of Christ history in a wide variety of ways. And here you can see our schedule. If you have missed one of the sessions, you can always catch the video recording of Rachel Killebrew or of Megan Edvilson. You can find those video recordings on our website and our YouTube channel. While tonight, live from England at 1 a.m., we are going to gather with our friend Karen Norton, who will share Preserving the Past inside the British Isles Mission Center archives. I'm especially looking forward to hearing how Karen utilizes the archival collection there in England, how she utilizes that collection in storytelling and sharing throughout her mission center. And a special bonus feature of tonight, following Karen's talk, we'll be hearing from Andrew Huse, who will share with us his work in digitizing his congregational history in El Cajon, California. And he's going to show you how to get onto a YouTube channel that includes a lot of that digitizing records, where you can check it all out all night long. So our hope is that throughout tonight's program and throughout the programs we've had over the last 2 weeks, we will all learn a thing or two about how we can preserve and share community of Christ history in our own neck of the woods, in our congregations, our reunion grounds, our mission centers, even if that means preserving our own stories or our family stories. But of course, none of this would be possible without your generosity. Um, we couldn't do our fall lecture series or our Alma Blair internship program or the annual Historic Sites bus tour, or any of our educational programs without your generous donations. So friends, thank you so much for the donations you have given and the monthly gifts that you are continuing to give to the Community of Christ Historic Sites Foundation to support these programs. And in case there is anyone out there tonight who would like to give tonight, you can see that there are 3 easy ways to support the Historic Sites Foundation through online giving and gifts through the mail. Wendy's going to drop the online link in the chat for those wanting to give an online donation tonight. Thank you all for your consideration and your continuing support. Well, also joining me tonight are Peter Smith and Wendy Eaton. Peter is a board member for the Historic Sites Foundation and co-host of our annual bus tour, which is going to be hitting the road here in just a few weeks, while Wendy serves as the administrative assistant for us at the Historic Sites Foundation and is co-host of the popular podcast series Cup of Joe, which is featured on the former Project Zion podcast, which is now rebranded as Faith Unfiltered. It's the same great podcast under a new name. So welcome, Peter and Wendy. I'm glad you're here. Let me tell you a little bit about Karen Norton. Karen is an American and recent British citizen living in Leicester with her husband, Jack. Karen is a teacher in Community of Christ and a senior youth advocate in the local government, working with secondary school-aged children in school and home support. Karen is a Graceland University alum and graduate of the MA Museum Studies program at the University of Leicester. Karen's volunteered for over a decade at various museums and has been the British Isles Mission Center historian since 2015. So happy 10-year anniversary, Karen. Karen is active in the Mission Center there in the British Isles, but she also attends the Leicester congregation, affectionately known as the Little Blue Church. And I'd be curious if there's anybody joining us tonight that has visited the Little Blue Church. Karen enjoys her gardening. She enjoys her road trips with Jack and spending time with their house panther, Luna. Karen's presentation tonight is called Preserving the Past Inside the British Isles Mission Center Archives. So, welcome, Karen. It's good to see you tonight. And thank you so much for all of the storytelling and sharing you're about to do. We're excited to have you.
Thank you so much. Well, hello, everyone, and good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you are tuning in from. It is an absolute privilege to be with you all. Today, I want to share with you some stories and some testimonies, as well as practical ways that you can share your church historical sources and make it relevant within your mission center. And no person is an island. Um, and the irony is not wasted on me at all that I'm an American and newly British citizen, and how an American could be so passionate about being a historian for the British Isles Mission Center, and I have been historian um, since 2015. However, I stand on the shoulders of giants and those who have given their disciples generous response of their time, their talent, their treasure, and their testimony. And I have some stories to share. Um, Jeff Holmes has been the church archivist in the British Isles, and I've asked him to share his experiences with the archives, as well as he has got some interesting things within the archive to point out as well. So thank you, Jeff, for sharing. I began collecting material for the British Isles Church Archive over 50 years ago. It was evident to me that much like was likely to be lost if this was not done, and as a result, I accumulated a very large archive. But Mark Shearer, when he visited me about 10 years ago, said it was one of the best records of a national church that he had encountered. I, along with Rosemary, have spent hundreds of hours arranging and cataloging the material. We have spent a lot of our own money on the archive to make it what it is today. Many have generously donated valuable material. It was stored in a room in our large house in Derby for many years, where it was displayed. And when we downsized our home, it had been moved to a room in Claycross Church, which was not ideal because of the space constraints. It has had to remain in containers, so more difficult to work on, but at least it is dry and safe. It is amazing what has survived and what continues to be sent to me. We have a full record of British Isles periodicals spanning 100 years, for example, and I recently acquired a full record of the Enfield Church, which is near London, which is extensive, and the information regarding the church in Birmingham, which I thought was lost. I really appreciate this picture within the PowerPoint is just a snapshot of things that have gone on in the British Isles Mission Center. But we really do stand on the shoulders of giants, of the people who shared everything. And I appreciate as a historian that I'm following these footsteps, and I'm truly just a custodian of these stories. So I think it's very important um, that we have a look at the British Isles Mission Center as a whole to start the story. So our faith journey begins in 1837, and Dunfield House, which is our campgrounds, was purchased in 1965. So we've just celebrated 60 years of Community of Christ with Dunfield House. We have 13 congregations across England and Wales and 2 online communities. One is Western Europe as well. And members and friends of Community of Christ that represent the UK, Ireland, and other international Community of Christ areas. And Jeff Holmes is our archivist. And the British Isles Mission Center archives are in Claycross Church, and it is the church in the top left-hand corner. Jeff would like to share some of the things that are inside our archive. The archive contains thousands of individual documents, including books, theses, periodicals, minute books, newspaper cuttings, church programs, letters, photographs, and audio tapes. With regards to church history in general, we hold volumes of Herald from Volume 1 in the 1860 to present day. The set is virtually complete. We have the first issue of the Millennial Star published in Manchester in 1841 and several other volumes. One of the oldest publications we hold is a book of letters from Oliver Coldry to W. W. Phelps, published in 1844. It contains one letter from Joseph Smith to Oliver, and writes very movingly of on Tuesday, the 7th of April, 1829, acting as a scribe, where Joseph Smith Jr. dedicated the Book of Mormon. With references to the British Church, we hold copies of the Restorator from the 1860s, and the originals are held in the National Library of Wales. This was a periodical written in English and Welsh, and we have volumes of the Southern District Herald from 1931 to 1951, which transformed into the Mission Courier for 1935 to 1951. Since then, the Courier has appeared under various slightly different names, and most recently, the church periodical is named The Rise. We hold detailed records of the origins and development of almost all branches in Britain and biographies of many leaders of the church. I've also asked Derek Judd if he would share his involvement with history and the archives. And Derek shared about Wales history and Community of Christ. I've always had an interest in church history, and I've been grateful to Jeff Holmes and Barry Fox for the histories that they have produced of the church in the British Isles. When I have a clear out, I send anything that I think might be useful to the archivist. As part of our Masters in Arts and Religion Studies in 2004, Mark Shearer set a research project for Richard James and myself. We prepared a report on the history of Community of Christ in Wales, 1920 to 1983, and at that time the British Isles archives were located in the home of Jeff Holmes. We spent 2 days searching through the archives for material that was relevant to our project. And based on that and many other resources, we prepared a 112-page report. The Llanelli congregation was organized in 1863. Will Isaac, a former pastor of the congregation, produced a brief history of Llanelli Church, which was published and dedication service program for their new church building in 1976. Under the title Share Your Object, Share Your Story, I made a presentation to the Mission Center Conference in October 2017, and I showed a picture of the chapel in Island Place, Llanelli. The building was constructed about 1837, and we believe to be the first Latter-day Saint chapel built in Britain, and there is now a blue plaque on the site commemorating this historical building. The Penthligair congregation was organized on January 1st, 1959, and in 1962 the congregation purchased the building that had been previously rented. It had been constructed in 1910 and was used by a Welsh Methodist church. I also served as pastor of Skewen congregation from 1970 to 1975, and the congregation was organized in 1947. A new church building was constructed and consecrated on the 18th of August, 1968. It's very difficult to talk about British Isles church history without mentioning Dunfield House. And Dunfield House has been part of the Community of Christ tradition since 1965, but Dunfield House has a history all of its own, dating to the 16th century, if not earlier. And with the great support of the Dunfield House managers, we were able to create an exhibition in the lounge area of Dunfield House, and that's where everyone likes to gather. It's quite cozy. And as well as being the historian for the British Isles Mission Center, I'm also a historian for Dunfield House. And we were able to create this together. So we've got mugs at the top, things that could have been purchased at the Dunfield shop. We have got photos of Dunfield when it used to be a hotel and a family home. Our middle shelf, we've got some different pot shards and bits of ceramic, which we'll show shortly, and some bottles and historical information from Dunfield House. And I appreciate that that makes Dunfield House quite unique from other Mission Center campground areas. However, I think it's important from a social historical perspective that you can use things from your own mission center to engage congregations and different generations and look at objects from a church perspective and use that within services. So share your object, which I know the historical sites has resources on. So just to show this up front and a little bit closer, and how that can be relevant to your mission centers as well. So these were all found when there was a pipe being dug up. So I just did a little bit of archaeological digging. And what I find is like there's a willow pattern china, which willow pattern you can find kind of internationally across the world. Um, but also just to kind of see like this is the kind of rubbish, this is the things that people were throwing away, but also how beautiful they are. So if you have a time and you have the resources to take a metal detector, you never know what you might find in your own campgrounds and how you can use that in relevance. So that's on the left hand side. On the right hand side is an exhibition we put together at Dunfield for the 50th. Uh, and we also had one for the 60th as well. And what I really like about this one is that you've got a pair of wellies, little pair of green wellies, or galoshes or rain boots, whatever you may call it, to represent in here all the fun that we have at Dunfield, either splashing in the stream or walking around in the grounds and the trees. And it's something like that can engage younger people, but can engage a whole different generations of people to talk about an item and why it's important to them. And you can use that within services and use that within sharing your own objects. And you can see the bottles there as well. And yes, that is a little picture of Winston Churchill because he may have stayed at Dunfield. Another practical way that you can use history is through something that we use in the Mission Center called the News Update. And this is a publication that is emailed out every week. And it is about congregational life. It's about Dunfield House. It's about joys and concerns and things internationally and with headquarters as well. So I did ask Mission Center President Andrew Fox and his father Barry Fox to contribute as well. In 1995, British Isles Region President Barry Fox wrote a PhD research thesis undertaken by the University of Nottingham on theology, history, and the organization of the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the British Isles. In 1996, an adapted reprint of one of the sections of his thesis was published as A People of Faith, A Brief History of the Church in the British Isles from 1863 to present day. From 1996 until 2023, Barry wrote an annual update to add to People of Faith, which I am now undertaking. This church history was republished on 5 separate occasions between 2001 and 2024, with each new publication containing a history of the church from the years since the previous edition. In recent years, Barry's son, Andrew Fox, has helped with the editing and formatting of People of Faith and in making it available to those interested in church history. The last publication, A People of Faith, was 146 pages in length. Until 2019, a large part of the British Isles archives was stored in Birmingham Church, with the rest being housed in the home of Mission Center archivist Jeff Holmes. When Birmingham Church was sold in 2019, Mission Center President Andrew Fox worked with Jeff to rehouse the archives in a room in Claycross Church. Since the late 1990s, a weekly news update has been circulated to members and friends of the British Isles Mission Center. Andrew Fox has been primarily responsible for creating the news update since 2009 and has access to electronic copies of every update from this time. These add to the historical record of the Mission Center over recent years. And as a historian, something that I have tried to do is create a connections corner or notes from the archive or notes from the curator and add in a section into the news update monthly or quarterly using something that's related to British Isles history that can be made relevant to today as well. So I've shared with Barb an example of what I did last Valentine's Day. I had a look at the Autumn Leaves publication, and there was a section in there that was written by Eliza Derry. It was a love letter that had been written. Um, so I think that's really lovely. To Charles Derry, I think that's really lovely that they shared something so private. Charles shared this in Autumn Leaves. It's something so private, but at the same time, this is something that is so relevant to us as well because we, as people, we still send romantic letters. We use text messages, Instagram, email, and letters as well. It's lovely to see someone has just said, "Yay, Autumn Leaves!" It's a fantastic publication, and I think that's really wonderful that when we can draw those human experiences from the past. Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. Earlier, I had touched upon that we stand on the shoulders of giants. And one thing about the mission center um, is that we are a small mission center. And because of that, we have a lot of family and friend connections, and we have to be very sensitive to that when we are accessioning objects and we're having objects donated, and how we use documents and objects and Bibles, Books of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants in a sensitive way when we use this information. So this Doctrine and Covenants actually belongs to Bill Coates, or some people may know him as William Coates, or some people on the call, and me as well, would affectionately call him Gangan. And he has okayed me to be able to use this Doctrine and Covenants as an example. And I am the custodian of this Doctrine and Covenants. So inside the Doctrine and Covenants is an inscription that reads, and you can see the embossed AK in the right bottom corner. Given to A. Kendrick as a small token of appreciation as our pastor, a brother, and a Christian gentleman, and that's from 1930. And then it was a gift that was given to Mr. W. Coates in memory of my husband, Albert Kendrick, who was called to hire December 9th, 1945, with all good wishes, in 1953. And inside the Doctrine and Covenants is an example of a service that Bill created, and what I love the fact that it's been saved in this Doctrine and Covenants. And I think it's really important that we think, especially historians, sometimes we can think of things quite clinically, and we can see things and go, "Oh, it's Doctrine and Covenants, so we'll put that on a shelf," but not realizing the human element and the significance of something. And it's not just a worship resource, but it has someone's life in it. It has notes in there, and we can learn so much from these things just by looking on the inside corner and seeing who these people are and learning about their connections to the church and using services and feeling inspired from those services that we can learn from. So I've asked Gillian Vincent, who has used the archives for her own university research and is currently working with Jeff Holmes to digitize some cassette tapes as well. And I've asked her to put together um, a story about Lily Oakland. And I'd like to, end this presentation full circle. Where is the history or the future of the church going with history? And for Dunfield House, because of its 60th anniversary, Jillian and I worked on having 60 objects for 60 years, and members across friends, family, members of congregations, friends of Dunfield House, friends of that are not connected with the church, all submitted different objects, stories, photos, to share about their memories and connections with Dunfield and the Mission Center as well. On the right hand side, we have photos of the stables um, from Dunfield House by Margaret and Brian Spray. And on the right-hand side, we have a dedication service of Dunfield. These were both put on our Instagram and Facebook pages, so we're able to reach out to international community. So I finished this presentation with this story. And thank you very much for your time. Lily grew up in a family steeped in the church. Her half brother, Arthur Oakman, worked for the church in America, and her brother Roy was the pastor of Infield Congregation. But at the time, no woman would have dreamed that they themselves could be a minister. Instead, a testimony service Lily once shared that she wanted to marry a missionary. She actually became a secretary, and in the time was asked to be a church historian. She took the job very seriously. She took notes at every service and recorded what happened at other church events she attended. She was thorough and meticulous. She wanted to be the best church historian she could be. Lily passed away some time ago now, but earlier this year, to mark the 60th anniversary of Dunfield House, we listened back to some of the recordings of services made on audio cassettes over the years and read some of her old notes. Her work, along with that of the Mission Center archivist Jeff Holmes, who himself made many recordings and interviewed church members, created a treasure trove of material. It reminds us of where we have come from and the solid foundation they built for us. Lily may never have lived the life of a missionary, but her legacy as a church historian continues to bring ministry to those of us here today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Karen. I love that you ended with a Lily Oakman tribute. Thank you so much. Um, we do have a special bonus feature this evening, but before we jump into that, I want to thank Karen for not only sharing what is inside the British Isles archives, but also sharing how you're able to use the materials that are in the archives to relate to the Church of today, how you're able to share that historic material in an educational and informative way. I think that's given us a lot to explore and consider. I'll also share that the example she was mentioning related to Charles Dairy, I uploaded that document into the chat. She also mentioned that if anyone has any specific questions about the archives and would like to reach out to the British Isles Mission Center archivist, Jeff Holmes, he has shared his email with us, and I've also dropped that into the chat. So please share our appreciation with Jeff in making himself available to answer those specific questions. We really appreciate it. And now, as I mentioned, there is an extra bonus speaker tonight, and that is Andrew Huse, who has spent the last few years digitizing his congregation's collections in El Cajon, California. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us tonight. We are ready to hear all about what you're doing in El Cajon.
Well, thank you so much, Barbara, and it's such a pleasure to be here. It's this was a surprise when you asked me, and I'm like, I can't believe there's so many people listening. So this is amazing. Um, yeah, I was at my church in November of 2023, just cleaning, going through stuff. I'm also the organist at my church, so I was practicing the organ. And I was just going through and I just found a big closet full of all these audio recordings that our church, that the RLDS branch had started going back to all the way to like 1986. And they were just sitting there. And I knew of the tapes. I knew that they had been there for a long time. But this time I was like, wow, they're still here. This is amazing. And I was like, okay, maybe instead of just sitting in this closet forever, maybe it's now time to do something about it. So I grabbed all the tapes. There was 680 little cassette tapes this big, total 680 of them. And I also grabbed the tape player that we had in the church, the tape player recorder. And I just went home and I connected it to my computer and I just started digitizing the tapes one by one in real time. And not only that, but basically each side is like 45 minutes long. So I just had, I worked from home, which is nice. So I just had the tapes playing, and I would just hit record, and then every 45 minutes I'd get up and flip it over and play the other side so I could record it. And as I was listening to these tapes, I was just blown away by what I was hearing, because there's just so many people that have been in our church over the years. And um, me being the organist, I right away heard all the organ music from our organist, Shirley Cordova, who was our organist from 1981 all the way until 2010, 2011, when had to stop playing. And she was just so amazing. The way she could play the organ was just so much better than me. And I was just so blown away to hear that. And it's really helped me play the organ better because she knew exactly how the organ worked at El Cajon. And I would say she rivaled Jan Crable at the temple, the way Shirley could play. She would play the pedals and all the different stops. And I was just like, wow, I'm so glad I digitized this and I'm hearing this, because I was like, this these tapes have been sitting in here for so long, and now they're finally being listened to. And as I was recording them, I was like, okay, now what? Now what do I do after I have this all these recordings? Like, what do I do? So I was like, I have to put them on YouTube. So I made up a YouTube channel, and I just started uploading them one by one. And I found a little program of our church from the 80s that had our picture of our church, and it had the RLDS name. So I put that as the thumbnail to the videos. And I just started uploading them little by little. Um, and there's so much history in there going back to the 80s. August of 1986 is the earliest I could find, all the way until 2015, and then after 2015 they stop. But because that's when I started doing my video of the church. I have a separate YouTube channel where I do all the videos of the church going back to 2017. So our church has a pretty much full services on audio, going from 1986 to 2015. And then from 2017 to present, we have our video of the church. So we're covered in terms of full length services. But it really helped me learn a lot about the El Cajon congregation. Um, I think there's also some difficult subjects in the recordings, um, especially when we had a female pastor. She served from 1988 to 1991. And at this time in our church, you know, women in the priesthood, women in positions of power, maybe, you know, we know the history. And she was forced out as pastor of our church. And it was really difficult, and it actually split the church, it split our congregation. And I found a recording where the pastor, it's her final communion service as pastor. And it's really, really hard to listen to because she's just so sad. And she basically says goodbye to the congregation. She's basically saying goodbye as pastor. And it was just so beautiful and moving to listen to, also very sad. And then Shirley Cordova and the congregation sing Let Us Pray for One Another, which is the lyrics of that hymn is our uh, hymn. It's our lyrics of our church. So I took that recording, and I I filmed video of our church as if you were watching it with the audio recording, but there's no one there. The church is empty, obviously. But I was just so moved every time I hear that recording. It's really beautiful, and I'm I'm just so glad that I found that, like, because there's just so much content, and I feel like there's going to be more as I continue to go through it. So that's um that's something that I've been doing on top of the audio recordings, is also finding little audio recordings that I can set video to and kind of bring it to life a little bit. So you're not only listening to the old audio, but it's being paired with new video of the church as it would have happened in, the 80s and 90s. Um, I also found a recording of what we had a member of the first presidency named Bud Sheehy. He came and spoke at our church in 1992. And there's actually a program, the bulletin of this service is still hanging up in the pastor study at our church. And I found the weekend. It was like a whole weekend, because not only he came and they like dedicated the building, because I think the building was finished, paid off, because another branch in San Diego, the San Diego Central branch, basically gave us money to pay off our branch, like our mortgage was paid off. So we had Bud Sheehy come out, and he gave a beautiful service. My grandma Joyce Wilcox said it was the most beautiful service she had ever heard. His sermon dedicating our building. And then after that, I think there was like lunch served in the fellowship hall, and then he gave a an update on the progress of the temple, and he showed pictures of the temple and talked about how it was coming along, and people asked questions. So I was just like, wow, I can't believe that exists. And I found it. And so it was just like so much treasure that I had found just sitting in the church for so many years. And I feel it's a privilege for me to have the ability and the know-how to digitize those tapes and then get them online, and it's so many people. I've sent the link out whenever I find a sermon that I found. Like, I think I've sent Sherry Belitza. She did so many sermons at our church in the 90s, and her husband Peter Belitza was the pastor starting in 1994. And my uncle Rob, he's found services where he was up front with Ed Ripple, and Ed Ripple did a sermon. Um, so it's really brought people together, I think, to hear these old tapes that I think we have to we have to remember, we have to keep alive. And so anyway, I guess I can share the YouTube channel if anyone is interested. It is here. Let me know if you can see this. It's called RLDS Records on YouTube, and that's a picture of our stained glass windows. Um, and that's the video that I was just talking about. Let us pray for one another. And there's 150 services. So if you're feeling, there's the date. There's just the date. And if it's a special thing like Father's Day, June 21st, 1998, I'll add just a little tag on it that's, the Christmas cantata. That's, Shirley Cordova, Dick Cordova running those services. And I also found, I play music in church. I play violin and organ. And I found the very first time I ever played in church, I found the recording of it. And oh, I forgot the song. It's a song by Bach. I think it's do 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 do, whatever that one's called. I forgot. That's the first song I ever played in church, violin. And Ode to Joy, thank you. And yeah, and Shirley Cordova thanked me, and the youth minister at the time, her name was Debbie Skinner. She thanked me too. And I can't believe I found that. Like, I was just like, wow, this is the very first time I played church music in church, and I was 6 or 7 years old, and I was like, wow, this exists. The audio exists, and I found it. And then one last thing I remember too, so many times I was listening to this audio, and I would just be like, oh my gosh, I remember that. Like, I remember this service. I remember that sermon that someone gave. And one of the most powerful ones was when I found a service, and it must have been from the early 90s when we sang "It Only Takes a Spark to Get a Fire Going." We had a huge children's choir, and I remember sitting in the choir loft, super young, hearing that, and I remember that, and then I heard the audio, and then Shirley Cordova plays it on the organ, and the whole congregation is singing that song, and I was like, wow, like I immediately remembered the visual of that, sitting in the choir loft singing that, and then I don't know, 30 years later, 35 years later, I hear it again, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I remember this. Like, that's so insane. So so yeah, so please check it out if you want, there's so many beautiful, lots of definitely I would say the farther the back you go to the 80s and 90s, it's definitely very Book of Mormon focused. Um and very Doctrine and Covenants focused. And of course the Bible as well. And there's just so many beautiful sermons. And if you want to see what our church looks like, that check out Let Us Pray for One Another, and you can really see what our church looks like. And so, yeah, so thank you so much. And I don't know what else to say. And yeah.
Well, thank you, Andrew. You have given us a lot to think about tonight, and it's absolutely fascinating what you're doing in El Cajon, from the nuts and the bolts of digitizing the collection that you found there to the challenges of, well, the emotional challenges of reliving that history, but also determining what to make accessible and what not to make accessible. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience. And I think it's neat, the shout outs to the Belletzas and others that are joining us tonight who have fond memories of the El Cajon congregation. It's great to all come together in community. Last week, we had Rachel Killebrew on talking about congregational historians and ways that we could preserve the records in our congregations. And Andrew, I think you are the unofficial historian of the El Cajon congregation. Thank you for preserving that history.
And thank you to Sherry Belitza too, because she was a historian at our church also in the past. So thank you, Sherry.
Oh, well, thank you, friends. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us tonight and for continuing this momentum all the way through to the end of this new series. For those of you in the audience, we'd love to hear your ideas of how we continue learning hands-on history. If you have any ideas of ways or people that we can invite on to share what it is they're doing to preserve church heritage in their area, we would love to hear your suggestions and recommendations. We've had a lot of fun with this new series, and I wanted to continue. Also, a big thank you to Peter and Wendy for helping out behind the scenes tonight and over the last 3 weeks. We are lucky to have you. We also want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us tonight, for sending in your questions, and for continuing to keep your interest up in preserving church heritage. We love that you love a good story as much as we do. And thank you for your generous support for the Community of Christ Historic Sites Foundation. We couldn't do programs like this without your support. So thank you so much. Although tonight was the last of the Hands-On History series, we will be back in a couple of weeks, before you know it, to kick off the fall lecture series. This new series will run from November 6th through December 2nd. So keep your eyes peeled for more details. Your Story is Church History series, where we have one of those programs in each of our lecture series, If you remember, Stacey Cram was one of our storytellers. Bunda Chibwe was the storyteller this last spring, and Everett Graffio was the one that kicked off this new series. Well, this fall, Andrew Bolton will be our storyteller for that Your Story is Church History series. So that's certainly something to look forward to. So again, friends, thank you for your support, for joining us tonight and over the last 3 weeks. We look forward to seeing you this fall with the fall lecture series. So until then, keep reading your church history and please do take care. Good night.